A blade ignites in eternal darkness. Crimson light cuts through shadows that have swallowed galaxies whole. The face behind that blade remains unchanged while empires crumble to dust around him. 300 years, 11 generations. One warrior, frozen in time, watching the universe age without him. His name is whispered in fear across 1,000 worlds. Lord Scourge, the Emperor's Wrath, the immortal executioner. More than 100 Jedi have fallen to his lightsaber. 10 times as many Sith have met their end at his hand. Yet the greatest blood on his hands is not from those who stood against him, but from those who fought beside him. In a throne room drenched in dark side energy, 3 legendary warriors stood united against the most powerful Sith Lord in galactic history. Victory was within their grasp. The future of trillions hung in perfect balance. And then, in one terrible moment, a red blade pierced through an ally's back. Betrayal, murder, a choice that would echo across 3 centuries. But what could drive a warrior to such an act? What vision could be so powerful, so undeniable, that it demanded the sacrifice of heroes? And was it madness, or the only path to salvation? The thunder over Drummond Katas never ceases. The rain never stops. And through it all, one figure stands eternal, bearing a curse disguised as a gift. Immortality, the cruelest prison ever devised. Tonight we journey through 300 years of darkness, sacrifice, and the heaviest burden one being can carry. This is the complete story of Lord Scourge, the immortal Sith Lord who betrayed legends to save a galaxy. From pure blood warrior to the Emperor's executioner, to the most unlikely hero the Force has ever known. So before you settle in, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy deep dives into Star Wars lore. Here's something interesting. 62% of you watching right now haven't subscribed yet. If you're finding value in these stories, a subscription really helps this channel grow and allows me to bring you more epic tales like this one. Drop a comment below telling me where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the galaxy. I love seeing this community span across different worlds and time zones. Knowing there are fellow lore seekers from everywhere makes this journey even more special. Now dim those lights, get comfortable under your blankets, maybe turn on a fan for that soothing background. Let's drift together into a story that spans centuries, where patience becomes torture and where one act of betrayal might be the only thing standing between existence and oblivion. This is the saga of the immortal Sith Lord Scourge, and it begins long ago, in an empire built on darkness. Nearly 4,000 years before the rise of the Galactic Empire, before Darth Vader's dark reign, before even the Clone Wars scorched the galaxy, there existed another Sith Empire, vast, ancient, and terrifying in its power. This was the Old Republic era, a time when Jedi and Sith clashed across countless worlds, when the dark side flowed freely through those who sought its power, and when one immortal emperor held dominion over half the known galaxy. The capital world of this Sith Empire was Drummond Katas, a planet consumed by perpetual storms. Lightning split the sky without cease. Thunder rolled across dense jungles like the heartbeat of some enormous beast. Rain hammered down in sheets that never ended, as if the heavens themselves wept for what this world had become. Every stone radiated malevolence, every tree twisted with corruption. The dark side of the Force had seeped into the very soil, into the bedrock, transforming nature itself into something hostile and hungry. Rising above the storm-racked jungle stood the Imperial Citadel, a monument of black stone and dark ambition. Within its halls, the Sith Lords of the Dark Council schemed and plotted, 12 of the most powerful Sith in the galaxy, each controlling a sphere of influence, each hungry for more power, each watching the others for any sign of weakness. Here, betrayal was not a crime, but an expectation. Assassination was not murder, but political maneuvering. Only the strong survived, only the cunning thrived. And watching over them all, from a throne room deep within the Citadel's heart, sat the immortal Emperor Vitiate, once a human child named Tenebrae. He had murdered his own father at age 10 and consumed an entire planet to achieve eternal life. The Sith Lord who had lived for over a millennium, the being who had twisted the very nature of the Force to fuel his endless existence. His plans were unknowable, his power was absolute. Even the Dark Council feared him, though they would never admit it aloud. In this world of perpetual darkness and political intrigue, one warrior had recently returned to the capital, Lord Scourge, a pure-blood Sith, born of the ancient species that gave the dark side philosophy its very name. His skin was the deep crimson of dried blood. Facial tendrils framed a face marked with ritual scars earned during brutal trials at the Sith Academy. His eyes burned with inner fire, twin embers of amber and red that had witnessed countless battles and even more deaths. Scourge stood tall and powerful, his physique that of a warrior in his absolute prime. Traditional Sith armor clung to his frame, blacks and deep reds, both ceremonial and functional. At his side hung his lightsaber, its blade the color of fresh spilled blood. He had spent 2 years in the outer reaches of the Empire, crushing rebellions on forgotten worlds, executing traitors who thought distance would protect them from imperial justice, proving his worth through violence and victory. Now, he had been recalled, summoned back to Drummond Cass for reasons not yet revealed. As he walked through the rain-soaked streets of Cass City, lightning illuminating his path in staccato flashes, Scourge felt the weight of the dark side pressing down from all directions. This place was a nexus of power and corruption. It tested everyone who dwelled here. It broke the weak and tempered the strong. He was proud to serve the Empire, proud to uphold the ancient traditions of the Sith, strength through power, victory through dominance. The weak existed only to serve or be crushed. These were the truths he had been raised with, trained with, lived by. His loyalty to the Empire was absolute, or so he believed. But lately, in the quiet moments between missions, strange visions had begun to trouble his meditations. Flashes of his own face, unchanged, appearing in scenes that felt impossibly distant, future echoes that made no sense. And beneath his pride, beneath his certainty, a small voice whispered a disturbing question. What if the Empire he served was not truly Sith at all? What if it was merely one being's instrument? What if everything, all the tradition and philosophy and power, existed only to feed an endless, insatiable hunger? These thoughts troubled him, so he pushed them down, buried them deep, and focused on the present. He had been summoned to the Dark Council chambers. A powerful Sith Lord required his services. Whatever mission awaited, he would complete it with the efficiency and brutality expected of a true Sith warrior. Lord Scourge walked through the storm, lightning reflecting in his burning eyes, not yet knowing that the path ahead would lead him to the greatest betrayal in galactic history, not yet understanding that his own face would remain unchanged for 3 centuries of suffering. The thunder rolled, the rain continued, and in the depths of the Imperial Citadel, forces older and darker than he could imagine were already moving, setting in motion events that would determine the fate of every living being in the galaxy. His story, his curse, his impossible burden was about to begin. The summons came through official channels, encrypted and urgent. Lord Scourge was to report immediately to the private chambers of Darth Nihilus, one of the 12 members of the Dark Council, not a request, a command that could not be refused without inviting suspicion and likely death. Nihilus controlled the sphere of laws and justice, which in practice meant she had authority over Imperial intelligence networks, surveillance operations, and the identification of traitors. She was old by Sith standards, having survived decades of Dark Council politics through a combination of raw power and ruthless cunning. Her reputation preceded her, paranoid, calculating, and utterly without mercy for those who crossed her. Scourge arrived at her stronghold as evening descended over Cache City. The building rose like a blade from the urban sprawl, all sharp angles and forbidding architecture. Guards flanked every entrance, their eyes tracking his approach with professional wariness. They recognized him, of course. His crimson skin and warrior bearing made anonymity impossible. They stepped aside without challenge. Inside, the air itself felt different, colder, more oppressive. Nyrus had layered the entire structure with dark side energy, creating an atmosphere that would unsettle anyone not steeped in Sith training. It was a power play, a demonstration. Everything about her screamed control. A servant, human and terrified, led him through corridors lined with artifacts from a dozen conquered worlds, trophies, reminders of what happened to those who opposed the Empire. Eventually they reached a meditation chamber, where Nyrus waited. She stood with her back to the entrance, gazing out at the storm beyond transparistile windows. Lightning illuminated her silhouette in irregular pulses. When she finally turned, her eyes fixed on Scourge with an intensity that would have made lesser beings flinch. "Lord Scourge, your reputation suggests competence. I require competence right now, not the usual parade of sycophants and backstabbers that infest this city." Her voice carried the clipped precision of someone used to absolute obedience. Scourge inclined his head respectfully, but did not bow. Among Sith, showing too much deference invited contempt. "I serve the Empire. Name your task." Nyrus gestured to a holographic display that materialized between them. Images flickered to life, crime scenes, bodies, assassination attempts documented in brutal detail. "Someone is trying to kill me." Not an unusual situation for a member of the Dark Council, you might think. But these attempts are sophisticated, coordinated. They speak to resources beyond what a typical rival might command. She moved through the images with sharp hand gestures. Each assassination attempt had been thwarted, but barely. Poisoned food intercepted moments before consumption. A sniper's position discovered just in time. A bomb diffused with seconds remaining on its countdown. I need to know who. More importantly, I need them eliminated before they succeed. You will investigate. You will follow every thread, interrogate every suspect, and when you discover the truth, you will bring me proof before you act. Is this understood? Scourge studied the evidence carefully. The attacks showed planning and patience. Whoever wanted Nyrus dead had access to Imperial security protocols, knowledge of her schedule, and the resources to hire skilled operatives. What makes you believe this is a single conspirator, rather than multiple rivals moving independently? A thin smile crossed her face. Because I know my enemies. This bears the signature of someone on the Dark Council itself. Someone who believes they can move against me without consequence. There it was, the real assignment. Nyrus suspected one of her fellow council members and wanted Scourge to provide evidence that would justify open conflict. In the Viper's nest of Sith politics, everything required plausible deniability until the moment you struck. I will require access to your security records, your staff, your complete schedule for the past 6 months. Granted, my people will cooperate fully or face my displeasure, which you may communicate on my behalf if necessary. Over the following weeks, Scourge immersed himself in the investigation. He analyzed every attack pattern, cross-referenced timing with Dark Council movements, interrogated servants and guards until a picture began to emerge. The conspiracy was real. Someone with intimate knowledge of Nyrus's defenses was feeding information to professional killers. He walked through the reconstruction of each assassination attempt, his analytical mind picking apart the logistics. The poisoner had accessed the kitchen during a narrow window when only senior staff were present. The sniper had chosen a position that suggested advanced knowledge of Nyrus's meditation schedule. The bomb had been placed by someone who understood the building's infrastructure. Interrogations followed. Scourge had a gift for reading people, for identifying weaknesses and exploiting them. Fear worked on some, others required more creative approaches. He used the Force to pull truth from reluctant minds, sifting through layers of deception until patterns emerged. A name began surfacing in whispered conversations: Darth Zedrix. Another council member, one whose sphere of influence overlapped with Nyrus in ways that bred natural competition. Zedrix controlled military logistics, which gave him access to the exact resources needed for these attacks. The evidence, circumstantial at first, began accumulating. Scourge reported his findings to Nyrus regularly. She listened with predatory focus, her satisfaction growing as the trail led toward her rival. Finally, after weeks of investigation, Scourge presented his complete case: documents, testimony, financial records showing payment to known assassins. Everything pointed to Zedrix. "You are certain as evidence allows, Zedrix has motive, means, and opportunity. The conspiracy originates from his network." Nyrus stood silent for a long moment, processing. Then she nodded slowly. "Kill him. Make it public enough to send a message, but clean enough to maintain deniability. An accident during training, a duel over some manufactured insult. I trust your creativity." Scourge accepted the assignment without hesitation. This was Sith politics. At its most fundamental, eliminate threats before they eliminate you. Survival of the strongest. He had done this before on smaller scales. A Dark Council member was simply a larger target. He chose his moment carefully. A gathering at the Sith Academy, where Zedrix would be demonstrating combat techniques to advanced students, public but contained. Scourge engineered a confrontation, questioned Zedrix's methods loud enough to draw attention, and when the council member took the bait and challenged him, lightsabers ignited before dozens of witnesses. The duel was brief and brutal. Zedrix was powerful, his blade work refined through decades of practice, but Scourge fought with the focused intensity of someone who had spent years in active combat rather than political maneuvering. He analyzed patterns, exploited openings, and when the moment came, his blade found its mark. Zedrix fell, dead before his body hit the ground. The witnesses saw only a legitimate duel between Sith Lords. No assassination, no murder, simply one warrior proving superior to another. Scourge reported success to Nyrus, expecting praise or reward. Instead, she summoned him to her stronghold with unusual urgency. When he arrived, her expression held something he had not seen before, not satisfaction. Fear. "You fool. You killed the wrong person." The words hit like a physical blow. Scourge's mind raced through the evidence, the testimonies, the financial trails. Everything had pointed to Zedrix. The evidence was conclusive. How could he not be responsible? Nyrus moved to a secure chamber, one shielded against any form of surveillance or force eavesdropping. Only when they were completely isolated did she speak again. "Because I fabricated that evidence. Zedrix was a political rival, yes, but he was not trying to kill me. I needed him removed and you provided the perfect cover. The real conspiracy is far larger and far more dangerous than one council member's ambition." Rage flooded through Scourge. He had been used, manipulated like some common tool. His hand moved instinctively toward his lightsaber, but Nyrus raised a hand. "Before you do something irreversibly stupid, understand this. The real conspiracy involves multiple Dark Council members. We are planning to overthrow the Emperor himself." Silence. Complete. and absolute. Those words were treason of the highest order. Simply hearing them made Scourge complicit. You are insane. The Emperor is immortal. He has ruled for over 1,000 years. What makes you think you could possibly succeed? Because he is going to destroy us all. Every Sith, every Imperial citizen, every living thing in the entire galaxy. His ultimate plan is not conquest. It is consumption. She produced a datapad containing information that should not exist. Records of the Emperor's past, the ritual on Nathema, the consumption of an entire planet, billions of lives extinguished in a single dark side ceremony that granted him immortality. He did it once before. Now he is preparing to do it again, but on a galactic scale. Every world, every system, all life converted to fuel for his eternal existence. The Dark Council has known for years, but lacked the means to stop him, until now. Scourge's world tilted. Everything he believed about the Empire, about service and strength, suddenly cast in a different light. If this was true, then the Empire was not a civilization. It was livestock being fattened for slaughter. What does this have to do with me? We have a prisoner. Someone who knows the Emperor's weaknesses, someone who has faced him before and survived. You are going to meet him, and then you are going to help us kill the most powerful being in the galaxy. Nyrus led him deeper into her stronghold, to levels that did not appear on any official schematic, past security checkpoints and force-dampening fields, to a cell where a single prisoner sat in meditation. The man looked up as they entered. His face was obscured by a distinctive mask, red and gray, with a pattern that seemed to shift in the dim light. A Mandalorian mask, ancient and powerful, but it was his presence in the Force that made Scourge pause. This was no ordinary prisoner. The power radiating from him, even suppressed by the dampening fields, spoke of incredible strength. Lord Scourge, Nyrus said quietly, meet Revan, the prodigal knight, the man who will help us kill the Emperor. The prisoner stood slowly. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of legend. I have been waiting for someone like you, someone who still questions. The Emperor is counting on blind loyalty. That will be his undoing. Scourge stared at the legendary figure before him. Revan, the Jedi who had fallen to the dark side and conquered half the galaxy. The Sith Lord who had been redeemed and saved the Republic. The warrior who had vanished into unknown space years ago, presumed dead. And now, a prisoner in a conspiracy to commit the ultimate act of treason. Scourge realized in that moment that his life had just changed irrevocably. Whatever came next, there would be no return to simple service, to following orders without question. He stood at a crossroads. One path led to continued loyalty to an empire that might be nothing more than an elaborate death trap. The other led to betrayal of everything he had sworn to uphold. Neither choice offered certainty. Neither promised survival. But as he looked into Revan's eyes, as he felt the truth of the words echoing in his mind, Scourge understood that some decisions were not about what was safe. They were about what was necessary. The cell was utilitarian and cold, bare walls of reinforced durasteel, force-dampening fields humming just below audible range, creating a pressure against consciousness that never fully disappeared. This was a prison designed not just to hold a person, but to break their spirit through isolation and sensory deprivation. Yet the man sitting in meditation seemed untouched by the environment. His posture was relaxed but alert, his breathing even and controlled. Despite years of captivity, despite torture and interrogation, despite everything Nyrus had surely subjected him to, Revan maintained an aura of quiet strength. Scourge studied him carefully. The mask was legendary. Every child raised in the Empire had heard stories of the Sith Lord who had nearly conquered the Republic, who had commanded fleets and broken armies, who had wielded power that made other Sith seem like children playing with dangerous toys. But those stories always ended the same way. Revan had been redeemed. The Jedi had somehow reached through the darkness and pulled him back to the light. He had turned against his own empire, killed his apprentice Darth Malak, and destroyed the Starforge that had given them such military superiority. Then he had vanished. Some said he had returned to the unknown regions. Others believed he had died in some remote corner of the galaxy. No one knew for certain. Until now? How long have you held him? Scourge asked Nyrus, not taking his eyes off the prisoner. 2 years. We intercepted him when he came searching for answers about the Emperor. Shot down his ship over Nathema. His droid managed to escape, but Revan himself has been our guest ever since. And what has 2 years of interrogation revealed? Revan spoke before Nyrus could answer. That your Emperor is not Sith in any traditional sense. He is something far worse. A parasite wearing the face of an ideology. His voice was measured and calm, but underneath Scourge detected something else. Not fear, not even anger, something closer to sadness. The weight of terrible knowledge. Nyrus deactivated the dampening field. Immediately the pressure lifted, and Revan's full force presence became apparent. It was unlike anything Scourge had encountered. Not purely light or dark, something balanced and complex. Power that came from understanding both sides rather than choosing one. Tell him, Nyrus commanded. Tell him what you told me about Nathema. Revan stood slowly, his movements economical and precise. Even after years of imprisonment, his body remained that of a trained warrior. Nathema was once a thriving world. Billions of inhabitants, lush ecosystems, a planet fully integrated into the ancient Sith Empire. Its original name was Midria, ruled by a Sith Lord named Dramath. He had a son, a child born with such power in the Force that reality itself seemed to bend around him. Revan paused, and when he continued, his voice carried the weight of horror barely contained. That child murdered his own father at age 10 and claimed the planet for himself. The reigning Dark Lord of the Sith at the time, Marka Ragnos, recognized his power and granted him the title Lord Vitiate. He ruled Medria as for years, growing stronger, experimenting with rituals that pushed the boundaries of what the Force could withstand. Scourge had heard fragments of this history before, but never in such detail, never from someone who had actually been to Nathema and witnessed the aftermath. Then came the Great Hyperspace War. The Republic defeated the ancient Sith Empire. Survivors fled into unknown space, desperate and broken. Vitiate saw opportunity in the chaos. He gathered every Sith Lord he could find, thousands of them, convinced them to participate in a ritual of unimaginable power. What kind of ritual? Revan's eyes, visible behind the mask's slits, fixed on Scourge with disturbing intensity. A ritual to consume the entire planet. Every living thing, every animal, every plant, every microorganism, 8,000 Sith Lords, billions of other lives, all of their Force energy drained completely and absorbed into a single being. The implications crashed over Scourge like a wave of ice water. The ritual succeeded. Nathema became a wound in the Force, a place where the energy that binds all life simply does not exist. Walking on that world is like drowning in silence. Your connection to the Force vanishes. Sound becomes muted, color drains away. It is the closest thing to death while still breathing. And Vitiate became immortal, gained power that defies conventional understanding, renamed himself Emperor, and led the survivors to rebuild in unknown space. That was over 1,300 years ago. He has ruled ever since, patient and unstoppable, preparing for his ultimate goal. Nyrus moved closer, her expression grim. "Tell him the rest." The Emperor is not content with immortality. He is not satisfied with ruling an empire. His goal has always been singular and absolute. He wants to repeat the ritual on a galactic scale. Silence filled the cell. Scourge processed the words, his analytical mind rejecting them, even as his instincts screamed their truth. That's impossible. The logistics alone would be beyond any conceivable power. I assure you, it is not only possible, but imminent. He has been laying groundwork for centuries. The invasion of the Republic, the political maneuvering, the careful cultivation of conflict, all of it serves a single purpose. When the galaxy is sufficiently weakened, when enough worlds are connected through his web of influence, he will activate the ritual. Every living being in the known galaxy will die. Their force energy will feed him for all eternity. Revan moved to the cell's small window, looking out at the storm that never ceased above Dromund Kaz. "I came here because the Force showed me visions of this catastrophe. After defeating Malak, after saving the Republic, I thought my work was done. I married. I tried to build a life, but the nightmares would not stop. I saw the Emperor's face, felt his hunger, understood that everything I had fought for would mean nothing if he succeeded. He turned back to face them. So I left my wife, my unborn child, everything I loved to follow those visions. I found Nethema, walked on that dead world, and confirmed my worst fears. Then I came here to the heart of the Empire, hoping to find a way to stop him. And instead, you were captured," Scourge observed. "Yes, shot down by Nyrus's forces as I approached Dromund Kaz, held prisoner, while she debated whether I was more useful as a bargaining chip or as a source of information. It took months before she finally understood that I was telling the truth, that her Emperor truly does intend to consume everything." Nyrus spoke up. "Other council members know. Not all of them, but enough. We have been planning this for years, waiting for the right moment. We need someone with knowledge of the Emperor's weaknesses, someone who has faced him and understands his methods." Scourge looked between them. "You faced him before." Pain flickered across Revan's expression, visible even through the mask. "Years ago, when I first fell to the dark side, Malak and I explored the unknown regions after the Mandalorian Wars. We found the Sith Empire, found the Emperor. He was waiting for us, knew we were coming before we arrived." His hands clenched into fists at his sides. "He crushed us. Our wills, our identities, everything we thought we were, broke us like children playing with powers beyond our comprehension. Then he twisted us, turned us into weapons, and sent us back to the Republic as Sith Lords with orders to conquer and weaken our former allies. But you broke free of his control. Eventually, Malak and I regained enough of ourselves to pursue power for its own sake rather than following the Emperor's directives that bought the Republic time. But it was not true freedom. Even after the Jedi helped me recover my identity, even after I killed Malak and destroyed the Starforge, part of me remained connected to him. That connection is what drew me back here." Revan removed his mask slowly, revealing the face beneath. Older than stories suggested, scarred and weathered, but his eyes held a clarity that suggested he had walked through darkness and emerged still capable of seeing light. "The Emperor has one weakness. He is powerful beyond measure, but his focus is narrow. When he concentrates on one target, he becomes vulnerable to others. That was how the Jedi originally captured me. That is how he can be defeated." "You want to assassinate him," Scourge said flatly. "I want to save the galaxy from extinction. If that requires killing the most powerful dark side user in history, then yes, that is exactly what I want." Scourge turned to Nyrus. "And my role in this conspiracy? You will help us free Revan at the proper moment." You will provide intelligence on the Emperor's movements and the Imperial Guard's deployments. And when the time comes, you will fight beside us when we make our attempt. This is treason of the highest order. If we fail, death will be the kindest punishment imaginable." Revan replaced his mask, and when he spoke again, his voice carried absolute conviction. "If we fail, everyone dies anyway. The Emperor's ritual will consume all life. There will be no Empire left to punish us, because there will be nothing left at all. Just one immortal monster floating in a lifeless void, sustained by the death of trillions." He stepped closer to Scourge. "I know this is difficult. I know you have served the Empire loyally. But ask yourself this: what kind of empire builds itself on the inevitable death of everyone within it? What kind of loyalty is owed to a ruler who views his subjects as nothing more than future fuel?" Scourge had no answer. The questions cut too deep, exposed doubts he had been suppressing for years. "I need time to consider this." "Time is exactly what we do not have." Nyrus snapped. "The Emperor's plans are accelerating. If you are not with us, you are a liability that must be eliminated." Her hand moved toward her lightsaber, but Revan raised his hand. "Give him time. Forcing this choice will only breed resentment. He needs to see the truth for himself." He looked at Scourge with something resembling understanding. "Go to Nathema. Walk on that dead world. Feel what the Emperor is capable of. Then make your decision. But make it soon, because the clock is counting down, whether we acknowledge it or not." Nyrus reluctantly nodded. "Very well. But Lord Scourge, understand this clearly. You now know secrets that could destroy us all. Whatever you decide, there is no walking away uninvolved. You are already part of this conspiracy simply by standing in this room." Scourge met her gaze steadily. "Then I will go to Nathema. I will see this dead world with my own eyes, and I will make my choice based on evidence, not fear or rhetoric." He turned to leave, but Revan's voice stopped him. "Lord Scourge, when you see Nathema, when you feel that absolute void where the Force should be, remember something. That is not the worst part. The worst part is knowing the Emperor wants to do it again, to the entire galaxy, to every world you have ever known. That is what we are fighting against." Scourge left the cell without responding. His mind churned with everything he had learned, everything he had been told. Part of him still wanted to reject it all as elaborate manipulation. Another part recognized the truth when he heard it. He would go to Nathema. He would see for himself. And then he would decide whether to save the galaxy or remain loyal to an empire that might be nothing more than a slowly tightening noose around civilization's throat. The choice ahead terrified him. But not making it would be even worse. The journey to Nathema took 3 days through hyperspace, 3 days for Scourge to meditate on everything Revan had revealed, 3 days to question every assumption he had built his life upon. The ship was small and automated, provided by Nyrus to ensure no witnesses to his unauthorized departure. When he emerged from hyperspace, the system appeared empty. No traffic, no colonies, no signs of life at all. Just a yellow star and a single planet hanging in the void like a tomb. Nathema. Even from orbit, something felt wrong. The usual background hum of the Force, always present no matter where you traveled, began to fade as he approached. By the time he entered atmosphere, it had vanished completely. The silence was deafening. Scourge landed in what scanners suggested had once been a city. The ruins stretched in every direction. Buildings perfectly preserved but completely empty. No decay, no vegetation reclaiming structures, no wind erosion. Everything frozen at the moment of death. He stepped out of the ship and immediately staggered. The absence hit like a physical blow. Where the force should flow, there was nothing, not darkness, not light, simply void. His connection, the sense that had guided him since childhood, disappeared as if it had never existed. Colors seemed muted, sounds became flat and distant. His own breathing echoed strangely in the empty streets. This was what death felt like, walking through a universe where life had been surgically removed. He forced himself to explore, entered buildings where furniture sat untouched, found tables still set for meals that would never be eaten, saw children's toys abandoned mid-play. Everywhere the evidence of sudden, complete extinction. In what had been a government building, he found records, holographic archives still functioning. After more than a millennium, he accessed them and watched the final days of Medria's. The ritual had been voluntary at first, Sith Lords believing they would share in the power. Citizens told they were contributing to the Empire's survival. Only at the end, when the energy drain began, did they understand the truth. By then it was too late. The recordings showed people collapsing in streets, animals falling where they stood, plants withering instantaneously. And through it all, one figure standing at the ritual's center, absorbing everything, growing brighter and more terrible with each life consumed. Lord Vitiate, the Emperor, the thing that had once been a child, but had become something else entirely. Scourge watched until the recordings ended, until the last holocam failed, and silence reclaimed the dead city. Revan had been right. This was not propaganda or exaggeration. This was historical fact. The Emperor had done this before, would do it again, if not stopped. Scourge returned to his ship and set course back to Drummond Cass's. He had his answer. When he arrived, Nyrus was waiting with urgent news. "We have a problem. A Jedi infiltrator has arrived on Drummond Cass. She is searching for Revan. Our intelligence suggests she is powerful and extremely dangerous." Scourge considered this development. "If she finds him, your conspiracy collapses." "Exactly. Which is why you are going to intercept her, bring her to me, alive, if possible. We may be able to use her as leverage." Scourge arranged to meet the Jedi in caves outside Cass City. He brought several of Nyrus's soldiers as backup, positioning them in ambush points throughout the cavern system. She arrived exactly when expected, a woman wearing simple Jedi robes, accompanied by a small utility droid. She moved with the economical grace of someone who had seen extensive combat. Her presence in the Force was unusual, powerful but strange, like a wound that had healed incorrectly, leaving scar tissue that changed how energy flowed. Scourge recognized her from intelligence reports. Mitra Surik, the Jedi exile, another legend walking. She had been a general in the Mandalorian Wars, serving under Revan before his fall, had commanded fleets and won impossible victories. Then at the war's end, at the Battle of Malachor V, she had activated a superweapon that killed thousands on both sides. The trauma had severed her connection to the Force. The Jedi Council had exiled her. She had wandered the galaxy for years, eventually regaining her Force connection and defeating a trio of Sith Lords who had nearly destroyed the Jedi Order. Then she too had vanished, presumed dead or in deep isolation. Now she stood in a cave on Drummond Cass, searching for her old commander. Nyrus's soldiers attacked on Scourge's signal. 4 trained killers moving in coordinated assault. Mitra's lightsaber ignited in a blur of motion, green blades spinning in defensive patterns that seemed almost lazy in their efficiency. Within seconds, all 4 soldiers lay dead or dying. She had not wasted a single movement. Every strike perfectly calculated, every defense exactly sufficient. Scourge watched from the shadows, genuinely impressed. This was a master at work. When the soldiers were down, Mitra turned toward where he waited. You can come out now. I know you're there. Scourge stepped into view, his hand resting on his lightsaber, but not drawing it. Mitra Surik, you are far from home. I go where I'm needed, and right now, Revan needs me. Her droid, T3M4, according to intelligence files, beeped aggressively and aimed an integrated weapon in Scourge's direction. Small, but apparently loyal. If you have come to kill me, you should know that I am considerably more dangerous than those soldiers, Scourge said calmly. I'm sure you are, but I did not come here to fight Sith Lords. I came to find Revan and bring him home. What makes you think he wants to go home? Pain flickered across her expression, because he has a wife who loves him. A child he has never met, a life waiting if he would only return to it. Scourge considered his options. He could fight her, but the outcome was uncertain. She had already demonstrated exceptional skill, or he could take a risk. Revan told me you would come, he said, to watch for a Jedi who moved like a soldier and fought like someone who understood the cost of violence. Mitra's stance shifted slightly, becoming less defensive. You have spoken with him? I have. He is prisoner of a Dark Council member named Nyrus. Has been for 2 years, but he is alive and relatively intact. Take me to him. Not yet. First you need to understand what you are walking into. Over the next hour, Scourge explained everything. The conspiracy, the Emperor's plan, Nathema, the ritual that would consume the galaxy. He held nothing back, gambling that honesty would serve better than deception. Mitra listened without interruption. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment. I need to see Nathema. Why? Because I am a wound in the Force. I survived Malachor 5 by cutting myself off from the death I had caused. If what you say is true, Nathema will resonate with me in ways you cannot imagine. I will be able to tell if you are lying. Scourge had not considered this. Her unique nature made her a living detector for Force voids. Very well, we go to Nathema, then you decide whether to trust me. They traveled together, an unlikely pairing, Sith Lord and Jedi Master. Throughout the journey, they spoke little. Past 3 men 4 beeped occasionally. Translating through text displays, the droid clearly did not trust Scourge and made no effort to hide its suspicion. When they arrived at Nathea, Mitra's reaction was immediate and visceral. She collapsed to her knees the moment the ship landed, gasping as if drowning. It's real. Force help us. It's all real. Scourge helped her stand. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face. I can feel it. The absence. The death. It's like Malachor, but infinitely worse. An entire planet. Billions of lives. All gone in an instant. She walked through the ruins as Scourge had, touching walls and reading the lingering imprints of catastrophe. When she found the government archives, she watched the same recordings he had seen. We have to stop him. Whatever it takes, we cannot let this happen again. They returned to Dromon Chaos as allies. Mitra agreed to meet with Nyrus and coordinate the assassination attempt, but first she insisted on seeing Revan. The reunion in that cell was quietly emotional. No dramatic embraces, just 2 old soldiers acknowledging each other's survival against impossible odds. You came, Revan said simply. You called through the Force. I felt it across the galaxy. I should not have. This is too dangerous. Your child, Brianna, is training the next generation of Jedi. I left instructions. If I do not return, she will ensure the Order survives. Revan removed his mask. Scourge saw his true face for the first time, older than expected, marked by suffering. But his eyes still held that absolute clarity. Then we do this together, all 3 of us. Lord Scourge has agreed to join our cause. Mitra turned to study Scourge more carefully. A Sith Lord fighting to save the galaxy. Strange times we live in. I fight to save my people. If that happens to save everyone else as well, so be it. She seemed to accept this. Good enough. Over the following days, they planned. Nyrus provided intelligence on the Emperor's schedule and the Imperial Citadel's defenses. Revan analyzed weaknesses in the security systems. Mitra studied Imperial Guard combat techniques. Scourge found himself working alongside people he should have killed on sight. Found it strangely natural. They were professionals with a common goal. The old categories of Jedi and Sith seemed less important than competence and commitment. Then Nyrus made her move. She leaked information about the conspiracy to the Emperor, but carefully, framing it as Darth Cedric's and other council members. Acting alone, the Emperor's response was swift and brutal. He ordered the entire Dark Council purged. Imperial Guard descended on Council strongholds across Cassie City. Massacres erupted in the streets. Sith Lords who had ruled for decades fell to coordinated assault. The political structure of the Empire collapsed into chaos overnight. In the confusion, Nyrus freed Revan from his cell. Nyrus returned his iconic mask. The moment he put it on, something shifted, memories flooding back, power returning, the legendary warrior fully restored. They had one chance. While the Emperor was distracted managing the purge, they would strike 3 warriors against an immortal god. Mitra looked at Scourge as they prepared to leave. "Are you ready for this?" "No, but necessity does not wait for readiness." Revan led them through secret passages Scourge had provided. They emerged near the Imperial Citadel as fires burned across the city. The Empire was tearing itself apart. Perfect cover for treason. At the Citadel entrance, Imperial Guard challenged them. Combat erupted. Mitra and Scourge fought while Revan and T3M4 pushed ahead. The droids' technical skills bypassed security systems. Revan's lightsaber cut through anyone who stood in their path. They reached the throne room doors. Beyond those doors waited the Emperor, the being who had consumed a planet, the monster who planned to consume a galaxy, the target of their impossible assassination. Scourge felt fear for the first time in years, not of death, of failure, of knowing the truth and being unable to stop catastrophe. Revan looked at his companions. "Whatever happens in there, know that you fought for something that mattered. History will remember this moment." Mitra activated her lightsaber. "Then let's make sure history has someone left to remember it." The doors opened, and 3 warriors stepped into darkness to face a god. The throne room stretched before them like a cathedral built to worship darkness itself. Massive pillars of black stone rose toward a vaulted ceiling lost in shadow. At the far end, elevated on steps, sat a simple throne, and upon that throne sat the Emperor. He wore plain robes, no elaborate costume or armor. His presence alone filled the chamber with concentrated malevolence that made breathing difficult. Revan, Mitra, and Scourge advanced slowly. Their footsteps echoed. The Emperor watched with what might have been amusement. Imperial guards lined the walls, elite warriors in crimson armor. They did not move to intercept, simply waited for their master's command. "Revan," the Emperor's voice seemed to come from everywhere. "You return to me at last, and you have brought friends." Revan ignited his lightsaber, purple, blade casting harsh light. "Your reign ends today." "Does it? How fascinating that you believe 3 individuals can stand against power that consumed an entire world." Mitra moved left, while Scourge flanked right. Classic tactical positioning. The Emperor stood slowly. As he rose, the temperature dropped. Frost formed on stone pillars. Revan attacked first, closing distance in a force-enhanced sprint. His blade came down in a devastating overhead strike. The Emperor caught the lightsaber with his bare hand. No weapon, no force barrier, simply his hand wreathed in dark side energy, stopping the blade. Force lightning erupted from his other hand, not controlled bursts, a torrent of pure destruction that lit the entire room. Revan was hurled backward, convulsing. He hit a pillar hard enough to crack stone. Mitra and Scourge attacked simultaneously. She came low, he struck high. Perfect coordination. The Emperor spun between them. His movements were wrong, too fast. As if gravity did not apply, both lightsabers passed through empty space. His counterattack sent both warriors flying. Mitra crashed into the far wall. Scourge tumbled across the floor. T3M4 rolled forward. Fire sprayed from his flamethrower attachment across the Emperor. For a moment, the Emperor's robes caught fire. Then, with a gesture, he redirected the flames back. Lightning followed. T3M4 exploded in a shower of components and melted circuits. No! Revan's shout came too late. The faithful droid was destroyed in seconds. Revan rose despite his injuries and launched himself back into combat with renewed fury. His lightsaber became a blur, strikes from impossible angles. The Emperor parried with casual efficiency, not even summoning a lightsaber, simply using the Force to deflect each strike. Mitra rejoined the assault. Her style complemented Revan's perfectly. Together they created a storm of attacks that should have been impossible to defend. The Emperor weathered it all, occasionally counterattacking with devastating effect. Force waves that rattled bones, lightning that left scorch marks, telekinetic strikes that felt like being hit by speeders. Scourge circled, looking for openings. His warrior instinct screamed that direct assault was futile. The Emperor was toying with them. Then Scourge felt it, pressure building in his mind, the Force reaching out, showing him something. Vision crashed over him like a tidal wave. He saw futures, thousands of them, millions, branching possibilities, spreading from this moment like infinite tree limbs. In some futures, Revan's next strike connected. The Emperor fell. But those futures all ended the same way. The Emperor's essence escaping, reforming elsewhere, returning stronger. The assassination only delaying the inevitable. In other futures, the Emperor won completely, killed all three, proceeded with his ritual. The galaxy died screaming. Between these extremes, one future shone brighter, clearer, as if the Force itself pointed toward this path. In that future, the Emperor lay dead, truly dead. Standing over his corpse was a Jedi Knight, powerful beyond measure. But the face was not Revan's, not Mitra's, someone else entirely, someone not yet arrived. The vision pulled deeper. He saw details, the Jedi's combat style, their companions, the exact circumstances of victory. And he understood. This was not the moment. These were not the chosen champions. If they continued this fight, they would all die, and the Emperor would proceed unchallenged. But if he acted now, that future could still happen. Centuries from now, when the prophesied champion arrived, Scourge's consciousness snapped back. The entire vision had taken perhaps 3 seconds. The battle continued, Revan and Mitra pressing their assault. And Scourge knew what he had to do. Every fiber of his being rebelled. His honor as a warrior, his alliance with these people, his desire to see the Emperor dead now. But the vision had been undeniable. This was the only path to true victory. Any other choice resulted in extinction. His hand moved to his lightsaber. The crimson blade ignited. Mitra's back was to him. She had just deflected an attack and was spinning into a counteroffensive. Time seemed to slow. Scourge saw every detail with painful clarity. The determination in her stance, the the trust she had placed in him. She was a hero, someone who deserved to see this through. But the Force demanded sacrifice, and prophecy cared nothing for what people deserved. Scourge's blade thrust forward, through Mitra's back, through her heart, instant death. The only mercy he could offer. Her lightsaber deactivated. She looked down at the crimson blade protruding from her chest with complete shock. Then her eyes found Revan's face. "I'm sorry," she whispered, blood on her lips. "I tried." She fell. Revan's scream was pure anguish ripped from somewhere deeper than language. He started toward her, but the Emperor's lightning caught him, drove him to his knees. The Emperor turned attention fully to Scourge. Those ancient, terrible eyes studied him. "Explain yourself, Lord Scourge." Every word felt like pushing broken glass through his throat. "This was always my plan, to infiltrate the conspiracy, to identify all traitors. The Jedi were tools. Nihris was the real target. A lie built on truth. The investigation had been real. The conspiracy had been real. Only Scourge's ultimate loyalty was being fabricated." The Emperor's expression did not change. "You expect me to believe you orchestrated all of this? I provided you with every conspirator, every Dark Council member who plotted against you. The Jedi who came to kill you, all delivered here, all defeated by my hand." Scourge gestured to Mitra's body, to Revan writhing under lightning. His voice remained steady through sheer will. "I have proven my loyalty in blood. What more would you require?" The Emperor studied him. Seconds stretched into eternities. Scourge could feel the dark side presence probing his mind, searching for deception. He thought only of service to the Empire, of hatred for traitors, all true feelings simply redirected. Finally, the Emperor spoke. "Kill Revan. Complete your demonstration." Scourge moved to where Revan knelt, picked up the fallen Jedi's lightsaber, raised it above Revan's head. "This is for the Empire," Scourge said, and brought the blade down. The Emperor's hand shot out, caught the blade inches from Revan's skull. "No, you have proven yourself sufficiently, but this one is more valuable, alive. His knowledge will serve me well." The Emperor approached. Up close, his presence was overwhelming. "You have served me exceptionally well today, Lord Scourge. The title of Emperor's Wrath has been vacant. You will fill it. My personal executioner." A clawed hand touched Scourge's forehead. Dark side energy flooded into him. Not an attack, a gift, power burning through every cell. "And because your service deserves reward, I grant you immortality. Your body will not age. Disease and injury will heal. You will serve me for as long as I require, centuries if necessary." The energy settled into Scourge's bones. He felt time's grip loosen and release, the curse disguised as blessing locked into place. "Do you accept this honor?" What choice did he have? Refuse and die. Accept and live to see if the vision proved true. "I am yours to command, my Emperor, now and forever." Imperial guards moved forward to collect Revan. They stripped him of armor and mask, bound him with force-dampening shackles. The Emperor watched with satisfaction. "Take him to Maelstrom Prison. Maximum security. I have questions that will take centuries to answer." As they dragged Revan away, he lifted his head. His eyes locked onto Scourge's. No anger, just profound sadness. Then he was gone, beginning 300 years of torture. Scourge stood alone. Mitra's body lay cooling at his feet. T3-4's components still smoldered. "You are dismissed, Lord Scourge. Report for briefing on your new duties." Scourge bowed and left. Each step away felt like wading through deep water. When he reached the corridors outside, his legs nearly gave out. What had he done? Murdered a hero, condemned another to eternal torture, accepted immortality as payment for treason, all based on a vision that might have been real prophecy or elaborate manipulation. 300 years stretched ahead. 300 years of wondering if he had chosen wisely or simply chosen cowardice. Mitra's face haunted him already, would haunt him for centuries. The shock in her eyes, the trust betrayed. He had killed her to save the galaxy, or he had killed her to save himself. Perhaps both were true. Thunder rolled over Drummond Kaz. Rain hammered against windows. The storm continued as it always had. And Lord Scourge, the Emperor's wrath, began his immortal service. The first night of 10,000 nights. The vision had shown him victory. Eventually, distantly, through patience that would break any normal being, he would wait, he would serve, he would survive. And he would never forget the feeling of his blade sliding through Mitra Surik's back, never forgive himself, never know peace again. Not for 300 years. The first decade passed in violence. Lord Scourge threw himself into duties as Emperor's wrath with desperation. He hunted Jedi across the galaxy, tracked Sith traitors with ruthless efficiency. His reputation grew dark and terrible. They called him the Immortal Executioner, the Emperor's Shadow, the Red Death. He killed more than 100 Jedi in those first years, each one different. Some fought with courage, others begged, many accepted their fate with quiet dignity. He remembered few of their faces, they blurred together into a catalogue too long to keep distinct. The Sith he killed numbered far higher. The Emperor used Scourge to prune away the ambitious and foolish. 10 times as many Sith fell to his blade as Jedi. But the work could not silence Mitra's ghost. She appeared in his dreams every time he rested, standing with her back to him, turning slowly. The moment before his blade struck replayed endlessly. He had killed her to save trillions. The math was simple. One life against countless others. Yet rationality provided no comfort, and 300 years was a very long time to carry regret. Revan remained imprisoned in Maelstrom Prison. Scourge received reports occasionally. The legendary Jedi endured torture that would have broken anyone else within weeks. Years passed, and still he resisted. Still he subtly influenced the Emperor's thoughts during interrogations. That influence mattered. It delayed the great ritual, bought the galaxy decades. But it came at a cost measured in agony. The years accumulated. 1 became 10, 10 became 50, 50 became a century. Scourge watched the Empire evolve around him. The Sith Lords he had known aged and died. New ones took their places. They looked at him with fear and resentment. He was a constant reminder that the Emperor's favor could trap you as easily as elevate you. His body remained unchanged. Same crimson skin, same ritual scars, same physical prime, but inside, erosion was constant. Each year wore away another piece of who he had been. He tried to maintain connections, attempted friendships with other Sith, but watching them age while he remained frozen became unbearable. Attending their funerals, knowing you would attend 1,000 more. Eventually he stopped trying. Isolation was easier. The Great Galactic War erupted. The Empire invaded the Republic. Scourge fought in dozens of battles, saw planets burn, watched fleets tear each other apart. He commanded troops during the sacking of Coruscant, led Sith warriors through the Jedi Temple while it fell. Blood ran through ancient halls. When the Treaty of Coruscant was signed, ending the war in stalemate, Scourge felt nothing. This peace was temporary. The Emperor's ultimate plan remained unchanged. The second century brought the Cold War period. Empire and Republic rebuilt while maintaining hostile distance, proxy conflicts, espionage and assassination. Scourge's skills remained in demand. He began losing track of his kill count. The numbers became meaningless. Hundreds? Thousands? Did it matter when you measured in lifetimes? Occasionally he met Jedi or Sith who reminded him of Mitra or Revan, someone with a similar fighting style, a comparable force presence. These encounters were torture. He would see a technique Mitra had favored and guilt would crash over him fresh. He started having visions again, fragments of the future, never as clear as that moment in the throne room, but persistent. He saw a Jedi Knight, young, powerful, surrounded by loyal companions. Was this the champion from his vision, or wishful thinking given shape by a desperate mind? The visions never provided answers, just glimpses, possibilities. The third century was the hardest. By then, Scourge had outlived everyone he had known. Every single person from his original life was dust. The Empire looked completely different. New architecture, new customs, new slang he had to learn. Young Sith looked at him and saw a museum piece, a relic from ancient history that somehow still walked. They did not understand the old ways. The traditions Scourge had been raised with were forgotten. The Empire no longer felt like his empire. It felt like a hollow mockery wearing the mask of his former life. He thought about death constantly, not suicide. His immortality prevented that, but he fantasized about enemies strong enough to kill him, battles that would finally end his service. But the Emperor's gift was thorough. Injuries healed, diseases never took hold. He was trapped in existence with no exit. The psychological toll was immense. He developed coping mechanisms, meditation techniques to create artificial emotional distance, ways of not quite being present during violence, running on automatic, letting his body go through motions while consciousness retreated somewhere safer. People who encountered him during this period described him as cold, emotionless, a machine that killed with disturbing efficiency. They were not wrong. Scourge had learned that feeling things hurt too much when you would live forever. Better to feel nothing. Better to be empty. He still dreamed of Mitra. 300 years, and she visited every night he allowed himself to sleep. Sometimes the dreams were memories, other times twisted variations. Occasionally she spoke, asked why he did it, accused him of cowardice. He never had good answers, not even in dreams. The Emperor's plans accelerated as the third century drew toward its close. Scourge could feel it, dark side energy building across the galaxy like a storm about to break. The ritual was approaching. If the vision was real, the champion should arrive soon. If not, then Scourge had wasted 3 centuries, had committed atrocity after atrocity in service to a lie. The uncertainty was worse than the guilt. At least with guilt, you knew you had done something wrong. Uncertainty meant maybe it had all been pointless. Then reports began filtering through intelligence. A new Jedi on Tython. Young but extraordinarily powerful, defeating Sith Lords, disrupting operations. Scourge requested all available information, studied holos and battle reports, analyzed combat footage. His heart, dormant for centuries, began beating faster. The fighting style matched his vision. The companions matched. The Force presence matched. This was either the champion or the most elaborate false hope ever created. The Emperor noticed the Jedi, too, began taking personal interest, issuing orders to eliminate this threat. Scourge volunteered to handle it personally. The Emperor agreed. After all, his wrath had never failed before. Because everything was different now. 300 years of waiting, 300 years of guilt and doubt and desperate hope, all of it came down to this moment. If Scourge was right, if the vision had been true prophecy, then this Jedi was the one who could actually kill the Emperor, the champion he had sacrificed everything to preserve a path for. If he was wrong, he would kill another Jedi, add one more to the list, continue his empty service until the galaxy died. Lord Scourge set out to find the hero of Tython, to determine once and for all whether his 3 centuries of suffering had meaning, or whether he was simply a monster who had spent 300 years lying to himself. The answer waited in the present, after centuries of only having the past, and Scourge walked toward it with something he had not felt in longer than he could remember. Hope, fragile, desperate, probably foolish, but hope nonetheless. The Galactic War had reignited with ferocity that surpassed even previous conflicts. Republic and Empire clashed across every major hyperspace route. The galactic economy strained under demands that seemed designed to bleed both sides dry. And through this chaos, one Jedi Knight carved a path that defied probability. The hero of Tython had emerged from the Jedi Order's rebuilt temple with a mission that seemed divinely appointed. Everywhere they went, Sith plots unraveled. Imperial operations collapsed. It was not just skill. Scourge had seen skilled warriors. This was something else. Destiny made manifest. The Force itself seemed to flow around this person, like water positioned exactly where it needed to be. Scourge tracked them across half the galaxy, never engaging directly, simply observing, learning, comparing what he witnessed to fragmented memories of his vision from 3 centuries ago. The lightsaber technique was right, form matching perfectly, even their companions aligned, a former Sith, a Republic soldier, a loyal droid, each piece falling into place. But observation alone could not confirm prophecy. Scourge needed to test them. He arranged an encounter on Tatooine, made it look coincidental. A clash over a Sith holocron both sides wanted. They fought in ancient ruins, sand whipping around them, blaster fire, and lightsaber clashes echoing. Scourge engaged the hero directly while their companions handled Imperial soldiers. He did not fight to kill. Instead, he tested, pushed them to reveal limits. The Jedi met every challenge, adapted to his style within moments, countered moves that should have been impossible to counter. Their connection to the Force was profound. After several minutes, Scourge withdrew, let the Jedi claim the holocron. As he left, he glanced back. The hero stood watching, their expression thoughtful, as if they sensed something unusual about this encounter. Good. Awareness would be necessary. Scourge reported to the Emperor that the Tython Jedi was formidable but not an immediate threat. This bought time, gave the hero space to grow stronger. The Emperor grew increasingly concerned. He had lived long enough to recognize when the Force was moving with purpose. "This Jedi troubles me," he admitted, during a rare private conversation. "They move as if guided." Scourge chose his words carefully. Many Jedi believe they serve the will of the Force. It makes them predictable. No, this is different. I feel echoes of something I have not felt in centuries, opposition with weight behind it. The Emperor leaned forward. "I want them brought here, alive. I will break them as I broke Revan, turn them into a weapon against the Republic." This was the moment Scourge had dreaded, direct orders to capture the one person who might stop the Emperor. A direct assault would alert them. I suggest a more subtle approach, lure them into a trap they cannot resist. The Emperor considered this. "Proceed, but do not fail me, Lord Scourge." Scourge engineered the trap carefully, made it appear the Emperor was personally overseeing a dark side ritual on his fortress, leaked intelligence suggesting this ritual would devastate Republic fleets. The hero took the bait. assembled a strike team of the Jedi Order's finest, masters who had survived decades of conflict. They infiltrated the Emperor's fortress with impressive skill, bypassed security, defeated Imperial guards, reached the inner sanctum where the Emperor waited, and then everything went wrong. The Emperor did not fight them. He reached out through the Force with power that made his display 300 years ago look restrained. Master Jarek Katadan collapsed first. The Emperor's presence invaded his mind, shattered his identity, rewrote fundamental aspects of who he was in seconds. The Jedi Master rose as something else, a puppet. The others fell in sequence. Each one dominated, each one twisted. The Emperor's technique was refined through centuries of practice. The hero of Tython resisted longer. Their connection to the Force provided some protection. They fought the invasion, pushed back against darkness, trying to drown their consciousness. But even they could not stand against power that had consumed an entire planet. Eventually they fell. Scourge watched from the shadows, felt his carefully maintained hope crumble. The vision had shown this Jedi defeating the Emperor, not serving him. Had he been wrong? Had 300 years been based on false prophecy? The Emperor surveyed his new servants with satisfaction. The Republic's greatest champions now serve me. He turned to Scourge. You have done well. These Jedi will spearhead operations against their former allies. Days passed. The captured Jedi served their new master with blank efficiency. The light that had defined them was extinguished. Scourge observed them when duties allowed, searched for any sign of resistance. The hero showed the most promise. Occasionally their movements hesitated. Brief moments where something underneath seemed to push against the surface. Then one night, Scourge felt a disturbance, a shift in the Force presence of the captured Jedi. He found the hero standing alone in a meditation chamber. Their eyes were closed, sweat beaded on their forehead. Their entire body trembled. They were fighting, pushing against the Emperor's control with every ounce of will. Scourge made a decision, one that would either vindicate 3 centuries or destroy him utterly. He moved close, spoke quietly. Keep fighting. You are stronger than his chains. Remember who you are. The hero's eyes snapped open. For a moment their true self looked out. Then the Emperor's control reasserted, and they collapsed. But Scourge had seen enough. The prophecy was not dead, simply delayed. This Jedi could break free, would break free. They just needed help. Over following weeks, Scourge found small ways to aid the hero's resistance, disrupted the Emperor's focus during meditations, created minor distractions that weakened control, nothing obvious, just gentle pressure in the right direction. The hero's struggle intensified. They began resisting orders, hesitating before executing commands. The Emperor noticed but attributed it to incomplete domination. This created a feedback loop. The more the Emperor focused on controlling the hero, the more openings appeared in his awareness. The more he pushed, the harder the hero pushed back. Finally, during a mission to assassinate a Republic senator, the hero broke free completely. It happened in an instant. One moment, they were the Emperor's puppet. The next, their true self reasserted with explosive force. They turned on Imperial handlers, escaped in a blur of action. The Emperor's rage was terrible. Fortress walls cracked. His dark side presence flooded through the structure. Find them, bring them back, or I will make your immortality the foundation of tortures you cannot imagine. Scourge accepted the mission, but when he left the fortress, he did not hunt the hero. Instead, he arranged to be found. They met in an abandoned factory on Nar Shaddaa. The hero approached with lightsaber ready, wary but willing to listen. You helped me, they said. Not a question. I did. Because 300 years ago, I saw a vision. You were in it, standing over the Emperor's corpse, the only future where he truly dies. He told them everything. The betrayal, the centuries of service, the desperate hope. When he finished, the hero was silent. You murdered Mitra Surik. You condemned Revan to torture. You have killed hundreds of my order. I have, and I will carry that guilt until my final moment. But if you kill me now, the Emperor wins. If you accept my help, we might actually stop him. The hero studied him, measuring, judging. If you betray me as you betrayed them, I will end you, prophecy or not. I would expect nothing less. They formed an alliance, unlikely, fragile, built on necessity rather than trust. But for the first time in 3 centuries, Scourge allowed himself to believe that maybe his long wait had not been in vain. The Emperor would fall, or they would all die trying. After 300 years, that was enough. The assault began under cover of a massive Republic fleet engagement. Dozens of ships clashed in orbit above Drom and Canis, their weapons fire illuminating the planet's perpetual storm clouds in brilliant flashes. It was the largest coordinated strike the Republic had mounted in years, and it served one purpose: draw Imperial forces away from the Emperor's fortress. While capital ships exchanged devastating broadsides and starfighters danced through debris fields, a single stealth transport slipped through the chaos. Inside rode the hero of Tython, their most trusted companions, and Lord Scourge, an alliance that would have seemed impossible mere weeks ago. The hero had assembled their strike team carefully. Kira Carson, a former servant of the Emperor who had broken free and become a Jedi. Doc, a medic and scoundrel whose irreverent attitude masked genuine courage. Tess-701, an astromech droid whose loyalty had been tested across countless missions, and Scourge, the ancient Sith whose 3 centuries of service were about to end one way or another. They said little during the descent. Each member understood the stakes. This was not a mission with fallback plans or extraction protocols. They would kill the Emperor or die trying. There were no other outcomes. Scourge guided them through passages he had walked for 300 years, secret routes that bypassed main security checkpoints, paths used by the Emperor's most trusted servants. They encountered minimal resistance at first. The fleet battle had pulled most defenders to orbital defense platforms, but as they penetrated deeper into the fortress, opposition intensified. Imperial guards appeared in coordinated groups. These were not ordinary soldiers. Each had trained their entire lives for one purpose: protecting the Emperor. They drew on his power through the Force, making them far more dangerous than their numbers suggested. The hero led the assault with precision that spoke to years of combat experience. Their lightsaber work was flawless. Economy of motion married to devastating effectiveness. Kira fought at their side, her own blade complementing theirs in a dance they had perfected through countless battles together. Doc provided covering fire with twin blasters, his shots finding gaps in armor with the skill of someone who understood anatomy intimately. T7 sliced security systems and provided tactical data, his domed head swiveling to track threats. Scourge fought with the accumulated knowledge of 3 centuries. He knew Imperial Guard techniques because he had helped develop training protocols, knew their weaknesses because he had spent lifetimes exploiting them. His crimson blade wove patterns that opened defenses, created opportunities for others to exploit. They pushed forward through corridors that grew increasingly familiar to Scourge. He had walked this path before, 300 years ago with Revan and Mitra. The memory was acid in his mind. The hope that this time would be different warred with certainty that history would repeat. They reached the throne room doors, massive slabs of reinforced metal that had witnessed centuries of Imperial history. Beyond those doors waited the being who had consumed a planet, who planned to consume a galaxy. the architect of extinction. The hero paused, looked at each member of their team. Whatever happens in there, you have been the finest companions anyone could ask for. If we fail, know that we tried. That counts for something. Kira placed a hand on their shoulder. We're not failing, not today. Doc checked his blasters one last time. Let's go kill a god. TAS-7 beeped affirmatively. The droid had faced impossible odds before. This was simply one more challenge. Scourge said nothing. There were no words adequate for this moment. He simply ignited his lightsaber and nodded. The doors opened. The throne room looked exactly as Scourge remembered. Black stone pillars, obsidian floor, throne elevated on steps, and sitting on that throne, the Emperor, waiting, as if he had known they were coming all along. Hero of Tython, the Emperor's voice resonated through the chamber. You return to me, and you bring the traitor Scourge. How delightfully predictable. They spread out instinctively, creating multiple angles of approach. The Emperor stood slowly, and as he did, the temperature plummeted. Frost spread across stone surfaces. You cannot win. Scourge knows this. He witnessed your predecessors fail 300 years ago. Yet here you are, repeating history like insects drawn to flame. The hero activated their lightsaber, blue blade, humming with controlled power. History doesn't repeat. We make different choices. Do you? Let me show you the futility of your choices. Force lightning erupted from the Emperor's hands, not aimed at the hero, but at their companions. Kira screamed as electricity coursed through her. Doc collapsed. TAS-7's systems sparked and flickered. The hero moved instantly, placed themselves between the Emperor and their friends. Their lightsaber caught the lightning, redirected it. The effort was visible, muscles straining, sweat beading despite the cold. Scourge attacked from the flank. His blade sought the Emperor's unprotected side. But the Sith Lord spun with that same impossible speed, caught Scourge's wrist with one hand while maintaining the lightning assault with the other. 300 years you have waited for this moment. 300 years of loyalty rewarded with treachery. Did you truly believe I was unaware? Scourge felt his bones grinding under the Emperor's grip. I believed you were arrogant, that your power made you blind to threats. I am arrogant because I have earned arrogance. Your betrayal was anticipated. Allowed, you serve my purposes, even in rebellion. The Emperor released Scourge and redirected his full attention to the hero. Force waves crashed against them, telekinetic pressure that would have crushed normal beings. The hero stood firm, drawing on reserves of strength that went beyond mere training. Kira recovered enough to rejoin the fight. She attacked from the opposite side, coordinating with Scourge, high and low, left and right, forcing the Emperor to divide his attention. For the first time, the Emperor's movements showed something that might have been effort. He blocked Kira's strike, deflected Scourge's thrust, but he had to work for it, had to actually engage rather than simply overwhelming through raw power. The hero pressed forward. Their blade work was extraordinary. Each strike built on the previous, creating rhythm and momentum that forced the Emperor backward step by step. Doc recovered and opened fire with his blasters. The shots were precisely placed, not trying to hit the Emperor directly, but controlling space, limiting his movement options, creating channels where the Jedi could exploit. TAS-7 rolled forward despite damaged systems, extended a welding torch attachment, not a weapon in conventional terms, but another element the Emperor had to account for. They were winning, not decisively, not quickly, but winning. The Emperor defending rather than attacking, giving ground rather than holding position. Scourge felt the Vision's presence in his mind. This was the moment. The exact circumstances he had foreseen 300 years ago, the hero pressing the attack, companions supporting, the Emperor forced onto defense. Everything aligned perfectly. The Emperor's next lightning blast caught Kira full on. She flew backward, crashed into a pillar, and did not rise. Doc rushed to her side, checking vitals, trying to stabilize. The hero's concentration wavered, just for an instant. Concern for their friend creating a momentary gap. The Emperor exploited it. Force push that sent the hero tumbling across obsidian floor. They rolled, came up in defensive stance, but momentum was lost. Now, the vision screamed in Scourge's mind. Now or never. He moved with speed accumulated over 3 centuries of combat, closed distance to the Emperor, not attacking directly, instead creating an opening, drawing the Emperor's attention and defense to the wrong angle. The hero saw it, understood instantly, launched themselves forward in a force-enhanced leap that carried them across the chamber in a single bound. Their lightsaber struck true. The blade pierced the Emperor's chest, slid through robes and flesh, and the dark side energy that sustained immortal existence. Blue light erupted from the wound. The Emperor's face contorted in something that might have been surprise. "Impossible," he whispered. Blood on his lips. "I saw every future. In none of them did you succeed." "Then you looked at the wrong futures," the hero said quietly. The Emperor's form began to destabilize. Dark side energy exploded outward in waves that shook the fortress to its foundations. Lightning arced between pillars. The throne cracked and crumbled. Scourge felt something break inside him. Not physical. The curse, the immortality granted 300 years ago. It shattered like glass, releasing him from its grip. He fell to his knees, suddenly mortal, suddenly aging. 300 years waiting to claim him all at once, but not instantly. Slowly enough that he would have time. Time to see if this victory was real. The Emperor's physical form collapsed, but his presence remained, his essence coalescing, trying to escape, to reform elsewhere as he had done before. The hero sensed it, raised their free hand, drew on the force with absolute focus. "Not this time, you die here, completely." Light erupted from their palm, pure force energy. Not dark or light, but something beyond those simple categories. It caught the Emperor's escaping essence, shredded it, scattered fragments across dimensions where they could never coalesce again. The presence that had dominated the fortress for centuries vanished, simply ceased to exist. The oppressive weight lifted. For the first time in over a millennium, the Emperor was truly dead. A silence filled the throne room, absolute and profound. Even the perpetual storm outside seemed to pause, as if the universe itself needed a moment to process what had happened. Kira groaned. Doc helped her sit up. T7 beeped weakly. They had survived, battered and exhausted but alive. The hero deactivated their lightsaber, looked at Scourge kneeling on the floor. "Is it over? Is he really gone?" Scourge felt the emptiness where the Emperor's presence had always been, a void that was actually peaceful rather than threatening. "Yes, you did what Revan and Mitra could not. You ended him." The hero extended a hand, helped Scourge to his feet. "We ended him, all of us together." Scourge felt tears on his face. He had not cried in 3 centuries, had not allowed himself that weakness, but now with mortality restored and the impossible achieved, he wept. 300 years, he said, voice breaking. 300 years. I waited for this moment. Wondered if I had made the right choice, if Mitra's death meant anything. The hero gripped his shoulder. It meant everything. Without your sacrifice, without your patience, we would not have won today. Mitra's death was not in vain. Alarms began sounding throughout the fortress. The Emperor's death had triggered automatic responses, security protocols activating, defensive systems coming online. They needed to leave. The team moved quickly through corridors that seemed different now, lighter somehow. The oppressive darkness that had saturated every surface was fading, as if the fortress itself was exhaling after holding its breath for centuries. They reached their transport and escaped into orbit. The fleet battle continued around them, but their ship was small enough to slip through unnoticed. Republic forces would claim this as a military victory. Only a handful would ever know the truth, that the war had been won not by fleets and armies, but by 5 individuals in a throne room. As Drummond Cass receded behind them, Scourge looked at his hands. They were beginning to show age, subtle lines appearing, skin losing some of its tautness, mortality reasserting itself gradually. He had perhaps decades left, perhaps less, but however long remained would be his own, not the Emperor's, not prophecies. His ease? The hero sat beside him. What will you do now? Scourge considered the question. Face judgment. I have committed crimes that span 3 centuries. The Republic will want answers. Justice. You'll have advocates, people who understand what you did and why. That should count for something. Perhaps, or perhaps I'll spend whatever time remains in a cell. Either way, I'm free. That's more than I've had in 300 years. Kira joined them, moving stiffly from her injuries. For what it's worth, you fought well today, like you actually cared about the outcome. I cared, Scourge said softly. More than I've cared about anything in longer than you've been alive. They traveled in silence after that, each processing what had happened, each understanding that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The Emperor's death would reshape imperial politics, create power vacuums and opportunities. The consequences would ripple for generations. But in that moment, on that ship, there was only relief, the weight of an impossible task lifted, the burden of prophecy fulfilled. Scourge closed his eyes. For the first time in 3 centuries, he slept without dreaming of Mitra's death. The guilt remained, would always remain. But alongside it was something new. Redemption, fragile and incomplete, but real. He had waited 300 years, sacrificed everything, become a monster in service to a vision that might have been delusion. And somehow, impossibly, it had been worth it. The Emperor was dead, the galaxy would survive, and Lord Scourge, after 3 centuries of immortal service, was finally free to be mortal again. That was enough. The Republic flagship welcomed them with a mixture of celebration and suspicion. Word of the Emperor's death had spread through military channels faster than their ship could travel. Fleet admirals wanted details, intelligence officers demanded debriefings, and standing quietly in the background, Jedi Masters waited with questions of their own. Scourge was separated from the hero's team immediately upon docking, escorted by armed guards to a secure holding cell. Not hostile treatment exactly, but not gentle either. He was an enemy combatant who had fought for the Empire for 3 centuries. That he had turned against the Emperor at the end did not erase his history. The cell was small and sterile. Transparent walls allowed guards to monitor him constantly. Force dampening fields hummed at frequencies designed to make meditation difficult. It was all standard procedure for captured Sith. Scourge sat on the narrow bunk and waited. He had become very good at waiting over the past 300 years. The interrogations began within hours. Intelligence officers first, asking tactical questions about Imperial fleet deployments and military capabilities. Scourge answered truthfully. The Empire he had known was already fragmenting without the Emperor's will to hold it together. His information was current and detailed. They seemed surprised by his cooperation. Then came the Jedi. Master Satele Shan herself, Grand Master of the Order and descendant of Bastila Shan, who had married Revan all those centuries ago. She looked at Scourge with eyes that had seen too much war, too much loss. You served the Emperor for 300 years, killed over 100 Jedi, 10 times as many Sith, countless others whose names we will never know. And now you expect us to simply accept that you were working toward his defeat all along. Scourge met her gaze steadily. I expect nothing. I betrayed Maître Surik and Revan to preserve a vision that showed the Emperor's true death. Whether that makes me hero or monster is not for me to decide. I will accept whatever judgment you pass. The hero of Tython has advocated for you. Claims you were instrumental in the final victory, that without your knowledge and assistance, the Emperor would have won. The hero is generous. The truth is more complicated. I made a choice 300 years ago that cost 2 heroes their freedom and their lives. I spent 3 centuries as the Emperor's executioner. That I eventually turned against him does not balance the scales. Satele studied him for a long moment. You aged when the Emperor died. His gift of immortality was broken. A curse disguised as a gift. Yes, I am mortal again. How long I have left is unclear. Years, perhaps. Maybe decades if I'm unlucky. Most beings would consider longer life a blessing. Most beings have not lived 300 years watching everyone they know turn to dust. Immortality without purpose is the cruelest torture imaginable. The Grand Master seemed to consider this. The Council will deliberate on your fate. It may take time. The crimes are extensive, but so are the extenuating circumstances. Days became weeks. Scourge remained in his cell, meditating and sleeping more than he had in centuries. His body continued aging, gradually. Hair showing gray, joints occasionally stiff, small reminders that time was claiming what it had been denied for so long. The hero visited when their duties allowed, brought news from the wider galaxy. The Empire was indeed fracturing. Multiple factions claiming authority. Civil war seemed inevitable. Without the Emperor's iron grip, Revan has been freed, they told him during one visit. Republic forces liberated Maelstrom prison. He was barely conscious after 300 years but alive. The medics say he'll recover physically. Mentally is another question. Scourge felt something twist inside him. Does he know I'm here? He knows. I told him myself. His response was complicated. I imagine it would be. I condemned him to 3 centuries of torture. That I did it in service to prophecy doesn't make his suffering less real. He asked to see you. The Council approved it, if you're willing. Scourge had dreaded this moment since the Emperor's defeat, facing the man he had betrayed, but avoiding it would be cowardice. I'm willing. They brought Revan to a secure conference room. Guards remained present, but at a distance, giving them space for a private conversation. Revan looked old, not just physically, though 300 years of torture had left visible marks, but in his eyes, in the way he moved, he carried weight that went beyond flesh. They sat across from each other. Neither spoke for a long moment. Finally, Revan broke the silence. You stabbed Mitra in the back, killed her instantly, then watched as I was dragged away to 3 centuries of interrogation and torture. Yes, and you claim it was all because of a vision, a glimpse of the future that showed someone else defeating the Emperor. Yes, 300 years I endured. Do you have any concept of what that's like? My mind was violated constantly. Every memory examined, every thought probed. I lost count of how many times I wanted to die, begged for death. But the Emperor kept me alive because I was useful. Scourge said nothing. There was nothing to say that would not sound like excuse or deflection. Revan continued, I influenced him, subtly, planted doubts about his great ritual, delayed the invasion by decades, maybe saved billions of lives through that interference, but it came at a cost I wouldn't wish on anyone. I know, if I could go back and make a different choice, I don't know if I would. The vision showed the only path to victory, but that doesn't make what I did to you right. No, it doesn't. Silence again. Longer this time. Then Revan sighed. Mitra's spirit stayed with me. Did you know that? She refused to join the Force, bound herself to me and helped me resist the Emperor's interrogations. For 300 years she was there, supporting me, giving me strength. Scourge felt tears again. She was better than both of us. Better than anyone I've ever known. Yes, and she would tell me now to forgive you, to understand that sometimes terrible choices serve necessary purposes. She believed in redemption. Always did. Even for Sith. Revan stood slowly, moved to the window overlooking stars. I'm not ready to forgive you. Maybe I never will be. 300 years of torture isn't something you just get over. But I understand why you did it. I've seen the aftermath. The Emperor truly is dead. The galaxy survives. That counts for something. He turned back to face Scourge. You lived with your choice for 3 centuries, carried guilt and doubt every single day, served a monster while waiting for prophecy to prove true. That's its own kind of torture. Maybe not equal to mine, but real nonetheless. What happens now? Scourge asked quietly. Now we both try to find peace with what we've done and what was done to us. You'll face Republic judgment. I'll testify about your role in the Emperor's defeat. Beyond that, I don't know. Neither of us gets the redemption arc where everything is forgiven and forgotten. Life is messier than that. Revan moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Scourge, I believe you saw what you claim. The vision was real. You made the choice you thought would save the galaxy. It worked. Maybe that has to be enough. After he left, Scourge sat alone with those words. Maybe that has to be enough. The Republic ultimately decided on conditional release. Scourge was stripped of all Imperial rank and authority, banned from Sith space, required to check in regularly with Republic officials, and sentenced to what amounted to community service helping train Jedi in recognizing and countering Sith tactics. It was not forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement that his final actions mattered, that 300 years of waiting had served a purpose. He was awarded the Cross of Glory in a small private ceremony. The hero pinned it to his chest personally, for extraordinary service in defense of the Republic and defeating the greatest threat the galaxy has known. The irony was not lost on anyone present. A Sith Lord receiving the Republic's highest honor for defeating an emperor he had served loyally for 3 centuries. Scourge accepted it without comment, wore it without pride. It was simply another weight to carry, alongside guilt and memory. He took an apartment on Coruscant, small and modest, began working with young Jedi, teaching them what he knew about Sith philosophy and tactics. Some were uncomfortable learning from an ancient Sith warrior, others recognized the value of knowledge earned across centuries. His body continued aging. Gray hair became white. His movements slowed slightly. Nothing dramatic, just the gradual erosion that came with mortality reasserted. He did not mind. Each ache reminded him that he was human again, that his time was finite, that made each day more precious than all the years of immortality combined. The hero visited regularly. They had become something like friends, or at least allies bound by shared history. "Do you regret it?" they asked during one visit. "The choice you made, the price you paid?" Scourge considered the question carefully. I regret Mitra's death every day. I regret Revan's suffering. I regret the lives I took as the Emperor's wrath. But do I regret making the choice that led to those things? No, because the alternative was extinction. Every living thing in the galaxy consumed to feed one being's hunger. Measured against that, my guilt is a small price. Mitra would be proud of you. I think she'd forgive you if she could. Perhaps, but I don't forgive myself, and I never will. That's my burden to carry. The hero smiled sadly. Then carry it well, and know that what you did mattered. Scourge worked, taught, lived quietly. Each day a gift he had not expected to receive. And each night, before sleep, he spoke to Mitra's memory, told her about his day, apologized again for choices made, thanked her for sacrifice given. He would never know peace, would never be free of guilt, but he was free of the Emperor, free of prophecy's weight, free to be simply himself. After 300 years, that was a greater gift than he deserved. And somehow, impossibly, it was enough. Scourge's apartment on Coruscant became a repository for his memories. Simple furnishings occupied most of the space, but one wall was different. He had covered it with images and objects that marked 3 centuries of existence. Not a shrine exactly, more an acknowledgement of time that could not be forgotten. A piece of metal from the sacking of Coruscant, a datapad containing names of Jedi he had killed, a hollow projection of Drummond Casses during a lightning storm, physical touchstones for experiences that spanned lifetimes. Late at night, when sleep was difficult, he would stand before this wall and remember not to torture himself, though there was an element of that, but to bear witness, to acknowledge that all those years had been real, that the people who died had mattered. The first century was easiest to recall. The details remained sharp, despite the passage of time. He remembered the first Jedi he killed as the Emperor's wrath, a young consular who fought with admirable technique, but insufficient experience. She had begged for her life at the end, offered information, promised cooperation, anything to survive. He had killed her anyway, because that was what the Emperor required. Her face still visited his dreams occasionally, along with so many others. The second century had brought the Great Galactic War. Scourge had commanded Sith forces in dozens of battles, seen entire planets burn. The sacking of Coruscant remained burned into his memory with particular clarity. Walking through the Jedi Temple while it fell, blood running through halls that had stood for millennia as symbols of peace. He had killed Master Donala personally, a legendary Jedi diplomat who tried to negotiate even as the temple burned around her. She had looked at him with such profound sadness in her final moment, not for herself, but for what he had become. That look haunted him more than hatred ever could. The third century was hardest to recall in specific detail. By then, the deaths had blurred together. He went through motions rather than actively engaging. It was the emptiest period of his existence, going through centuries on automatic, while his spirit slowly eroded. What struck him most, looking back, was how much he had lost without realizing. Small things accumulated over time. The ability to enjoy a meal, appreciation for music or art, simple pleasure in another's company. Immortality had not granted eternal youth. It had granted eternal numbness. He thought often about the others who had chosen different paths. Revan, who even under torture maintained enough of himself to influence the Emperor, that took strength. Scourge was not certain he possessed to endure 3 centuries of violation and still find ways to resist, to effect change, even from the depths of hell. Mitra's choice haunted him differently. She had known the risks, had chosen to confront the Emperor anyway because it was the right thing to do. No calculation about prophecy or long-term strategy, simply moral clarity. that some things demanded action regardless of cost. Scourge had always considered himself a warrior, the someone who made hard choices and lived with consequences. But compared to Revan's endurance and Mitra's conviction, his own choice seemed smaller, more self-serving. He had chosen survival over sacrifice, had chosen to serve the Emperor rather than die fighting him. Yes, the vision had shown him that patience would ultimately matter, but had that been false prophecy or convenient rationalization 300 years later, he still could not be entirely certain. His work training young Jedi provided some measure of purpose. They came to him wary but curious. He taught them practical things, how Sith fought, where traditional Jedi techniques had vulnerabilities, ways to recognize dark side corruption before it became irreversible. Some students recoiled from his lessons, found them too pragmatic, too willing to acknowledge darkness as something to be understood rather than simply opposed. Others thrived on the information, recognized that knowledge was not endorsement. One student, a young human named Jace, asked him directly about his centuries of service. How did you kill so many Jedi and still consider yourself redeemable? Scourge appreciated the bluntness. I don't consider myself redeemable. Redemption implies returning to some prior state of grace. I can never do that. What I can do is serve the light now, in whatever time remains, and hope that adds some small counterweight to the darkness I've created. But you're teaching us, that's good work. Good work performed by someone drenched in blood. It doesn't wash clean, Jace. You never wash clean. You just try to dirty yourself less going forward. These conversations were exhausting. Each one required excavating memories he would have preferred to leave buried. But he owed these students honesty. They deserved to understand what 3 centuries of compromise and moral flexibility had cost. His body's aging accelerated slightly as years passed. He was perhaps 20 years post-Emperor's death when he noticed his hands shaking occasionally. Nothing severe but noticeable. A reminder that mortality was actively reclaiming territory it had been denied for 3 centuries. He did not fear death. After 300 years, the prospect of ending was more comfort than terror. What concerned him was dying before certain debts were paid, before certain conversations happened. Revan visited him once during this period, their second face-to-face meeting since Maelstrom Prison. The former legendary Jedi looked healthier than before, but still carried visible weight. They sat in Scourge's apartment, tea cooling between them, and spoke of things that could only be discussed between those who had survived the impossible. I'm going back to the unknown regions, Revan told him. There are things out there I left unfinished, threats I need to understand better. You've earned rest. Why not take it? Because I spent 300 years in a cell while the galaxy fought without me, I owe it to everyone who suffered to make sure those years mattered for more than just delaying the Emperor. Scourge understood that logic. You're still trying to save people, after everything you've endured. What else is there? We don't get to retire from being who we are, Scourge. I'm a soldier and a Jedi. That's what I was meant to be. And I'm a warrior who served darkness for 3 centuries. What does that make me now? Revan considered someone who finally chose the right side. However late, however much it cost, that counts. They spoke for hours about the Emperor, about the Force, about whether choices made under impossible circumstances could ever be truly judged. Neither reached conclusions. Some questions had no answers. Before leaving, Revan said something that Scourge carried with him afterward. Mitra's spirit stayed with me for 300 years. At the end, before she finally joined the Force, she wanted me to tell you something if I ever saw you again. Scourge's breath caught. What? She said to remember that the Force works in cycles, that darkness creates light, creates darkness, creates light. that your choice to wait was part of that cycle, and that she understood, even if she didn't agree. Tears came again. They came easily now, in his old age. She forgave me? I don't think she saw it as needing forgiveness, more as accepting that the galaxy is complicated and people do their best with impossible situations. Her final words were, "Tell him he carried it well." I think she meant the guilt. After Revan left, Scourge stood before his memory wall and wept properly for the first time in 3 centuries. Great shaking sobs that came from somewhere deeper than conscious thought. Grief for Mitra, for Revan, for himself, for everyone who had suffered under the Emperor's reign. When the tears finally stopped, he felt lighter, not absolved. Never that. But acknowledged, seen. Mitra had witnessed his centuries of carrying guilt, and judged him not by the betrayal, but by how he had lived with it afterward. Perhaps that was the closest to absolution he would ever receive. Perhaps it was enough. He continued his work, continued teaching. His hands shook more frequently now. His joints complained about Coruscant's humidity. Age was claiming him visibly. But he had purpose. He had students who learned from his mistakes. He had small redemption earned through daily choice to serve light rather than darkness. 300 years had taught him that immortality was not time. It was what you did with time. He had wasted centuries serving evil while waiting for prophecy. Now he spent each remaining day trying to balance scales that could never truly be balanced. It was not enough, would never be enough. But it was all he had, and so he gave it freely. The weight of centuries could not be lifted, could only be carried with grace and acknowledgement. Scourge had learned that lesson slowly and painfully. Now he lived it as best he could, one day at a time, one student at a time, one small act of service at a time. The galaxy moved on around him. New conflicts emerged. The Empire continued its slow fragmentation. The Republic rebuilt. Life persisted in all its messy complexity. And in a small apartment on Coruscant, an ancient Sith Lord taught young Jedi how to recognize darkness. Not because it absolved him, but because it needed doing. And that, after 300 years, was purpose enough. The years continued their gentle erosion. Scourge passed his 30th year after the Emperor's death, then his 40th. His crimson skin had faded to dull rust, white hair had thinned. He walked with a cane now, joints protesting after centuries of abuse followed by rapid aging. His teaching work gradually diminished as his body made demands that could not be ignored. The Jedi Council adjusted his duties. Fewer students, more advisory roles, consulting on historical matters rather than active instruction. He did not mind. There was relief in stepping back. News reached him from across the galaxy. The Empire had fractured into competing factions. The Republic was rebuilding, hope for a future not dominated by constant conflict. Scourge watched these developments with detachment. He had seen too many cycles to believe any change was permanent, but he was glad the Emperor's particular darkness had ended. The hero of Tython visited when duties allowed. During one visit, Scourge spoke plainly. "I'm tired, not just physically, tired in ways sleep doesn't fix. 300 years of living, then 40 more, it's enough." How long do the medics think you have? Years perhaps, maybe a decade. But I find myself not wanting to be careful anymore. I want rest. Where will you go? Scourge had been considering this for months. Somewhere quiet, far from the core. I want to see ocean and sky without history pressing down. I want to watch the sun rise and set, knowing I don't have to do anything with the day between. He found what he sought on a water world called Tython's Rest. 90% ocean dotted with small islands, low population, no strategic value, perfect obscurity. He bought a small dwelling on an island with perhaps 24 other inhabitants, farmers and fishers mostly, people who cared about weather patterns rather than galactic politics. They knew he was old and had served in the wars, nothing more specific. His first morning there, he woke before dawn and walked to the beach. The ocean stretched endlessly, waves rolled with patient rhythm that had nothing to do with empires or prophecies, just water and gravity and eternal dance. He watched the sun rise, watched light paint the water in shifting colors, orange to pink to gold. It was beautiful in a way that required no interpretation. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Scourge felt something close to peace. Days settled into routine. He woke with the sun, made simple meals, walked along the beach when joints allowed, sat on his porch watching the ocean when they did not, read histories of eras he had lived through, amused by how wrong official accounts often were. Neighbors would visit occasionally, bring fish or vegetables, share stories about their lives that were blessedly mundane, broken irrigation systems, children learning to swim, debates about repairing fishing nets. Scourge listened and appreciated the absolute ordinariness. These people worried about real things, immediate things, not the fate of galaxies, just life in all its small complications. He made no effort to tell them his history, let them believe he was simply an old veteran finding peace in retirement. His body continued its decline. Some days were better than others. He did not fight it, did not seek medical intervention beyond basic care. He had lived far longer than nature intended. Letting nature finally reclaim him seemed right. One evening, watching sunset paint the sky in impossible colors, he thought about Mitra, wondered if her spirit was at peace, if she watched from wherever Force spirits inhabited and felt satisfaction at how things had turned out. "I carried it well," he said quietly, to the empty air. "The guilt, I tried to honor that, tried to let it make me better rather than breaking me." The waves continued their rhythm. Scourge took that as answer enough. Months passed, then years. His decline accelerated slowly. Walking became difficult, then rare. He spent more time on his porch, watching the ocean, content to let the world move around him. The hero visited one final time, brought news that Revan had finally found peace, had ventured into the unknown regions and resolved whatever drove him, had returned briefly to say farewell before disappearing into the Force on his own terms. He asked about you before he left, wanted to know if you were well. "And what did you tell him?" "That you found peace, that you were exactly where you needed to be." Scourge smiled. "That's more generous than accurate, but I appreciate it." They spoke for hours about the Empire's fragmentation, about new threats in distant sectors, about the Jedi Order's efforts to rebuild. When the hero finally left, they embraced something that would have been unthinkable decades ago. "Thank you," Scourge said simply, "for giving my 300 years of waiting, meaning for being the champion, the vision promised. Thank you for waiting, for believing, for doing the impossible." After they left, Scourge sat on his porch and watched stars emerge, the same stars that had shone above Dromund Karan's during those 3 centuries of service. They looked different here, cleaner somehow. His final weeks passed in gentle decline. Neighbors checked on him regularly, brought food and companionship, sat with him in comfortable silence, watching the ocean. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant display, Scourge felt something shift, a loosening, as if whatever had kept him tethered to existence was finally releasing its grip. He was not afraid. After 300 years of fearing he would never die, and 40 more learning to live again, death was simply the next transition. He thought of Mitra, of Revan, of the hero, and all the others who had shaped his impossible journey. thought of students he had taught, the small redemptions earned through daily choice. It was not enough to balance 3 centuries of service to darkness, would never be enough. But it was what he had done, and he had done it as well as he could. The sun touched the horizon, Scourge's breathing slowed, synchronized with waves rolling onto shore, in and out, rise and fall, the rhythm that had existed before him and would continue after. His consciousness began to dissolve, not painfully, simply releasing, like tension held too long, finally allowed to ease. He felt the force around him, not claiming or demanding, just present, accepting. He had served darkness for centuries, had killed hundreds, had betrayed heroes. But in the end, he had chosen light, however late, however much it cost. Perhaps that was enough. Scourge's last thought was of Mitra's face, not the moment of betrayal, earlier when they had first met in those caves, when she had looked at him with cautious hope that even Sith could choose better paths. She had been right. His final breath released. The sun dipped below the horizon. Darkness fell gently across the ocean. And Lord Scourge, after 340 years of life, finally found the rest he had sought. The waves continued their eternal rhythm. The stars emerged overhead. Life on the small island went on without him. His body was found the next morning by a neighbor bringing fresh fish. They buried him on the island overlooking the ocean he had loved. No grand monument, just a simple marker with his name and 2 dates spanning an impossible lifetime. The Jedi Order sent representatives. The hero came personally. They stood at the grave and spoke words of remembrance for someone who had been enemy, ally, and ultimately something more complicated than either label could capture. He waited 300 years, the hero said quietly, carried guilt every day, served a monster while believing in prophecy, and when the moment came, he helped save the galaxy. That's what I'll remember. They planted a tree beside the grave. A sentinel tree, native to Tython. It would grow slowly over centuries, a living reminder that even the longest darkness could end in light. The galaxy moved on, as galaxies do. New conflicts emerged, new heroes rose. The story of Lord Scourge became footnote in history texts. But for those who knew the full truth, he was something more. A reminder that redemption was always possible, that even the darkest choices could be walked back from, that patience, however torturous, could serve greater good. And on a small island, on a forgotten world, waves continued to roll onto shore. The sentinel tree grew slowly, and beneath simple stone, an ancient warrior finally truly rested. After 340 years, Lord Scourge had found peace, and across the galaxy, in temples and academies, his story was told to young Jedi. Not as warning, not as inspiration exactly, but as truth. Complicated, painful, hard-won truth. That the galaxy was never as simple as light and dark, that people contained multitudes, that 3 centuries of evil could be partially balanced by 4 decades of service, that prophecy sometimes required impossible patience, that guilt carried well could teach as powerfully as pride. The story of the Immortal Sith Lord, who waited 300 years to save the galaxy, who betrayed heroes to fulfill prophecy, who served darkness while believing in light, who finally, after impossible time, found rest. His story ended on that quiet shore, but the lessons endured, and somewhere in the eternal flow of the Force, perhaps Scourge's spirit joined those he had wronged and those he had saved. Perhaps they understood, at last, that all choices carried weight and all beings did their best with impossible circumstances. Or perhaps there was simply peace, release from burden, rest after 340 years of carrying guilt and hope in equal measure. Either way, it was enough. The story was complete. The immortal had become mortal, had become memory. And the galaxy, vast and uncaring and beautiful, continued turning. As it always had, as it always would. The waves rolled on, the sentinel tree grew, the stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. And Lord Scourge, the Emperor's wrath, the betrayer, the patient one, slept beneath the earth. His 3-century wait finally over, his impossible burden finally set down, his story finally told. In death, finally, he was free.